What really prompted me to make this video is, I guess frustration is the best word to use. I know when it comes to YouTube, there's just a ton of people on there, and there are certain people that are deemed influencers as a result of the influence that they have over their following, their community, whatever you want to call them. People look at these people as the experts in their particular field, the voices of reason sometimes, the people who provide insight into products or services or ideas or things. And for me, as I talk mostly about technology, a lot of the other YouTubers that I watch happen to be tech YouTubers. And in this situation, I know a lot of people use his name, and people will put his face in their thumbnails to get clicks. And I don't want to do that, but I will talk about him. And the individual that I'm talking about is Marques Brownlee. Dude's been doing this for a very long time. He's the king of tech YouTube. And it's evident that he does know what he's talking about. And it's also evident that as a result of him having such a large following now, companies like Apple actually pay attention to what he has to say. Do they actually follow what he says or what he suggests? No, but they definitely do recognize that, yes, he has experience with these types of things, with these products. In the grand scheme of things, I mean, if it's a new product, obviously he hasn't touched it yet. But yeah, as a tech YouTuber with over 17 million subscribers, he knows what he's talking about. And because of that large number of subscribers, consider subscribing. Apple sees that there are a large number of people who will watch his content and make decisions based off of what he says. So the first thing that I wanted to play right here is Apple recognizing what Marques says.
But first, I'd like to provide a couple of updates, starting with the Mac. In June, our Mac lineup got even better. We introduced the two most powerful Macs we've ever shipped, the new Mac Studio and Mac Pro. This completed the transition of the Mac to Apple Silicon. We also introduced the world's best 15-inch laptop, the new 15-inch MacBook Air. And the reaction has been fantastic. Tom's Guide said the 15-inch MacBook Air is the best 15-inch laptop you can buy. And Marques Brownlee said the 15-inch MacBook Air is going to instantly rocket to the top of the lineup to become the most popular 15-inch laptop.
Now, as we can see, yes, Apple quoted Marques Brownlee, quoted Tom's Hardware, and I believe even at the end of this particular scene, which I have not captured, there are just a bunch of other reviewers' names and their little quick quotes as to what they've said about whether it's the Mac or even some of their other products. I really don't recall. But when a $3 trillion company name drops you individually, it almost becomes like you have a civic duty. And I'm not going to say that he doesn't do a great job of making content, because he does. But there definitely are instances where I'm just like, you can't say that, or you shouldn't have said that, or you can't give Apple a pass. Well, the first thing we should do is let's actually go to the video of Marques's M2 MacBook Air 15-inch review and see what he actually said.
See, the MacBook Air was the most important Mac for Apple. I mean, they had other expensive flagships, but this was the most entry-level attainable model for the masses, and it quickly became their most recommended and best-selling Mac. And it's the first way most people got into the Mac and formed their first Mac OS experiences. But sneakily, bigger screens are actually the most popular. And in America especially, people can't help but want a version with a little bit of a bigger screen. So they did the obvious thing and made the 15-inch MacBook Air. It's built on the same platform as the 14-inch MacBook Air, but a little bit bigger screen, and I predict it'll pretty much instantly rocket to the top of the lineup to the point where it is the most popular 15-inch laptop and the most popular Mac on planet Earth.
And what's perfectly understandable is, one, we all have our own opinions. I disagree with this statement. I don't think the 15-inch MacBook Air is going to be the most popular Mac. It might be one of the, if not the most popular 15-inch laptop. And that's just, well, Apple only makes, one 13-inch, well, they make two 13-inch laptops, technically, the 13-inch Pro and the 13-inch Air. But now they only make one 15-inch laptop. And at the time, yes, people will buy it, so forth and so forth. But as time goes on, more people will buy that same 15-inch MacBook Air. And I know the way Apple will quantify it is that even if that same MacBook Air has been purchased by different people over the course of multiple years, they'll still tally it as a single model. So it's, oh, this is the most popular 15-inch laptop. Plus, there are a lot of companies that do make 15 inches, but they also make 13 inches and 14 and 16, just like Apple, but they make a variety of models. So you'll have Dell that might make 4 or 5 different 15-inch models, HP, Lenovo, so forth. They all have multiple models in those same size categories. So the metric isn't really a fair metric in my opinion. But this isn't even the thing I have an issue with. After I heard Tim Cook say what Marquez said, I just wanted to come to the video and see what he actually said. This is one video of his that I did not watch because I have no interest in getting the 15-inch MacBook Air. I will say it is enticing because I currently have a 13-inch Air and a 16-inch Pro. Sometimes I feel like that 16-inch Pro is a bit much, but it does come with the benefit of that additional power. Personally, and I've said it in the past, I feel like the 14-inch laptop, and especially the 14-inch Pro, is the optimal landscape. You get the portability of a laptop, but the screen is big enough where you actually have a decent amount of real estate. 16-inch, I don't really like carrying that around. I don't even really like carrying it around the house, let alone having to take it out in public. 13-inch, sometimes it's a bit small trying to see a bunch of things on the screen. But the beauty of the 13-inch and the 14-inch is that even if you feel like you're lacking in screen real estate, you can just connect it to a monitor and boom, you have as much space as you need considering whatever size monitor you've chosen to get. But as I said, I don't have any issue with any of this. This is all his opinion, and it just happens to not align with my opinion, which is fine. The issue I have is another video that he made, and it's always like little small things. And obviously, you're never going to really find somebody who agrees with everything that you say 100%, as you shouldn't. It's good to have healthy conversation. It's good to have different opinions. But as I said before, when you have a platform this big and you give a company as big as Apple any type of pass on something that they just flat out shouldn't do, that's when I'm like, all right, dude, they at least listen to you. I mean, do they care what you have to say? It's hard to say, but they at least listen to you. So let's go over to his video about the iPhone 15. That's one of several videos where I'm just like, but this is the most recent one that I was just like, come on. All right, now, here he's just going to talk about the iPhone 15 camera. I mean, nothing too alarming, but I hope I'm able to stitch all this together in something that is oh so unimportant. But it's just something that I observed and I said, I don't like that. So let's continue with the video.
Now, if you were paying attention before, you'll remember that this new iPhone has the exact same chip as last year's Pro iPhone. Same processing cores, same image signal processor, same neural engine, same A16 Bionic, same everything. So why is this new 24 megapixel default only coming to the newest iPhone 15 and not last year's Pro? Like, I still have last year's Pro phone and I've updated it to the latest software and it does not get this feature. It's still shooting 12 megapixels. So honestly, now my base iPhone 15's non-zoomed in photos are actually looking a little better, a little more detailed than last year's Pro phones.
Now, what he's talking about is just that Apple has said we're putting the same hardware in this year's regular iPhone 15 as what was in last year's iPhone 14 Pro. I know it is missing one camera because the Pros get 3 cameras on the back and the regulars only get 2, but the 2 cameras that he's referring to are apparently identical. Additionally, the chip, so the A16 Bionic, is the exact same chip that's in the iPhone 14 Pro. So the iPhone 14 Pro has the same A16 Bionic as well as similar cameras as the regular iPhone 15. So just keep that in mind, that he's clearly like, hey, this doesn't really make sense. He goes on, and there's some other features that he's like, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that all of the hardware is there, yet Apple is choosing to not implement things on last year's phone that it's clearly capable of running because this year's phone, which has the exact same hardware, can do it. And he's even said that, well, some of his photos on his iPhone 15 from this year are now looking better than some of the photos from his i14 Pro from last year. So again, I hope I'm going to be able to stitch all this together. So let's go on to the next video.
Also, USB-C is definitely not new, but here it is, alongside all the benefits that come with it, from using the same cable to charge everything, to plugging into more accessories like monitors and keyboards and all kinds of other stuff. It is sad that the older chip does mean there's no USB 3 controller, so there are no USB 3 data speeds. It's still slow, but honestly, unless you're using the Pro iPhone's camera features, there's almost nobody here buying this phone that's going to actually need fast data transfer anyway, so I guess you can give it a pass.
No, it was so quick. It was so quick, just a dismissive, it's, I mean, I felt the shrug of, it's really not that big of a deal. Because he says that, well, most people using the regular iPhone 15 aren't going to be using Pro features or whatever. So it's okay that the data transfer speeds on said iPhone 15 are 20 times slower than the iPhone 15 Pro. But earlier, and honestly, I don't remember which direction these videos actually happened when I was watching them, but earlier in my video, he goes to say that the camera systems, or at least let's just say that the two available cameras on the regular iPhone 15 are better, or at least producing better photos than his iPhone 14 Pro. And I think he said, non-zoomed in, whatever, but it sounds like the camera system on the iPhone 15 is a very capable camera system. And just because it's not the Pro camera or the Pro phone doesn't mean people aren't going to want to actually use them. And as a person who's complained about USB 2 speeds, it makes the device, in terms of wanting to transfer data to and from something, almost unusable in 2023. Yes, there was a time when 480 megabits was fine, but when you can transfer things at 40 gigabits, depending on what you're doing, and even 80, and I think we're approaching 120 gigs, it gets to the point where you're like, this USB 2 that Apple has put on this iPhone 15 is just a huge disservice. And what's annoying here is that, yes, you have this influencer who has over 17 million subscribers. I don't want to say contradicting himself, because we all do that, but it's more the Apple pass of, well, users didn't buy the Pro phone this year, so it's okay that they don't get what Apple deems a Pro feature, which is really just almost the bare minimum when it comes to data transfer speeds. Not to mention the fact that this particular influencer has said, according to, in his opinion, that, well, the cameras, though, are pretty good. I mean, they're as good as last year's Pro, but because it's not this year's Pro, it's okay that they don't have USB 3 speeds. And the BS, because I think that's my first gripe when it comes to how he's just kind of passive and easily dismissing the fact that these flagship level devices are still running USB 2 speeds out of their USB 2 port. Let's just look at Apple's keynote from the iPhone 15 Pro and regular release, just to show what exactly he's talking about not having the USB 3 controller.
A17 Pro has dedicated engines that enable Pro features. Those include the ProRes codec and a display engine that powers ProMotion and the always-on display. We also included a dedicated AV1 decoder, enabling more efficient and high-quality video experiences for streaming services. iPhone 15 Pro also has the new USB-C connector, But for our Pro models, we included a new USB controller in A17 Pro that enables new workflows not possible before. This is the first iPhone with USB 3 speeds up to 10 gigabits per second. Using an optional USB 3 cable that's up to 20 times faster than USB 2.
So I'm going to stop it right there. And he said a couple of things. I really was just focused on the USB speeds. But he also talked about the different engines to help control the always-on display and things like that. And it's like you have cheap phones that have always-on displays. And always-on display isn't anything new. But that's another feature, I believe, that does not come to the regular iPhone. And I'm just like, okay, always on display, whatever. I guess I can't do that. Also, they've deemed it ProMotion, so 120 hertz. Yeah, you have budget and mid-range phones that have 120 hertz displays. So again, nothing that is groundbreaking, but they cap it behind these pro-level features. And yes, right here, they're talking about, or he's talking about, the fact that USB 3 is 20 times faster than USB 2, which yes, is an accurate statement. But they've segmented it into this new controller that's supposedly on this particular device. And if I remember when I'm editing, I'll put up a little screenshot just showing that, well, even apparently this controller is the same controller that's in some of the M series products. And technically they could have actually gotten away with Thunderbolt speeds, but that's not the point of this. You don't need most likely Thunderbolt on a phone, but still it's just, all right, well, they might even be the same hardware as some of their other devices, and they've still kneecapped it a little bit for their phone, even though it's their bread and butter device. But again, all right, I rambled there for a minute, so I apologize. But what they're saying is that there is a specific controller that enables these USB 3 speeds that for some reason isn't worthy of being in any other iPhone prior to the iPhone 15 Pro. And instead of going back and forth between GSM Arena's website and the video and trying to do that, I just printed the PDF. And I've shown this plenty of times before, and it really is just a comparison of what exists. So on the screen, we have the iPad Air from 2020, the iPad Mini from 2021, and the iPhone 13. And if we come down, ooh, that was kind of pretty. I think I'm on the wrong page now. Okay, so if we come down, the first thing we need to see, and I kind of actually screwed this up a little bit, but we can work with it. And where are we? I always lose it, but I know that it's there. Okay, here it is. So we have the Apple A15 Bionic, and that is in the iPhone 13. We have the same Apple A15 Bionic, which is in the iPad Mini from 2021. And then we have the Apple A14 Bionic. And I honestly didn't mean to have this one here, but I do. So we're just going to go with it. And that's fine. But we have 3 A-series chips that have come out in the past when USB 3 and USB-C on the iPhone was not a thought. But keeping in mind, most importantly, that the chip in the iPad Mini from 2 years ago is the exact same chip as what's in the iPhone from 2 years ago. And we come down and we say, okay, well, in terms of data transfer speeds, we have USB 2.0 over Lightning for the iPhone from 2 years ago, but we have USB 3 over USB-C from the iPad from 2 years ago. And again, not even a pro level iPad, the iPad Mini. So for some reason, Apple has said, well, let's bring USB-C to our iPads first, which they've done that. All right. And then we bring USB 3 speeds to those same iPads. And yes, I get that the connector is different, but the chip is the same. The chip is the A15. So for them now to say, well, in this pro level iPhone 15, what's so special about the A17 Pro is the fact that it has this USB 3 controller. It looks like they've done the exact same thing in some of their older devices. And it's not even a difference in chips at this point in terms of what's happening in the past. They both have literally the exact same chip, the A15 Bionic. So no differences there. So why is one receiving USB 3 speeds and the other one receiving USB 2 speeds when there's no difference? Now, I do have this iPad. Is it going to change? Okay. So yeah, I do have the iPad Air from 3 years ago. And come on, next page, please. For some reason on GSM Arena's website, it just says USB Type-C connector. So when I looked on this page, I was like, okay, I'm not even really sure how fast the speed is, but let's Google it. So here we are on Mac Rumors website. Again, I just printed the PDF, and they have a nice chart of various USB speeds. And it looks like the stuff at the bottom is kind of rumored. So at the time of writing, we weren't sure. But what's important is it's what's happened in the past. So yes, I talked about the iPad mini from 2021, which gives us these USB 3.1 speeds. So that's 5 gigabits. And then I showed that the iPad Air from 3 years ago mentioned USB-C, but we weren't really sure about how fast it was. But yes, right here we can see that it's 5 gigabits, just like the iPad mini from 2021. But what's even more interesting is that now we have the iPad Air from last year, which gets 10 gigabit speeds. So now we're directly on par with what the iPhone 15 Pro has. And I know, and one of the reasons that I really wasn't too concerned about the iPad Air from 2022 was the fact that that now has an M1 chip in it. But if we're looking at the iPads prior to that, they all have A-series chips, at least the ones that we care about. They have USB-C connectors, and they operate at USB 3 speeds. And the very last thing that I wanted to show, at least for now, is this page right here. And I know that I'm all over the place. I can't help it. And if I were better at this, yes, it would have been more succinct and it would have been a nice little flow chart and so forth, whatever. But up until this point, I've always been trying to go back and forth between the fact that, oh, well, yes, these iPads have USB-C. And yeah, that might be the reason that they are capable of operating at USB 3 speeds. But John Prosser from Front Page Tech broke it to me, and I'm sure other people didn't realize this either. But here we have the iPad Pro from 6 years ago. 6 years ago. And yes, we have the iPad Air and the iPad and the iPhone 12. And looking at the iPhone 12, Apple A14 Bionic, and then yes, that iPad also the A14 Bionic. So similar to what I was talking about before, we had issues when it comes to, well, why does this one chip get these features when it's in this device, but when it's in this other device, we get different features. So scrolling down to the bottom, and again, I'm all over the place, so I apologize. Keep in mind that that iPad Pro from 6 years ago is running this A10 Fusion. We scroll down to these USB speeds, and I'm sorry that it doesn't show what device we're talking about at the top, but you can kind of see it diagonally that the iPad Air USB-C connector, as we mentioned, has USB 3 speeds, has the same chip as this Lightning device over here that runs at USB 2 speeds. But then this iPad Pro, again, from 6 years ago, is running has a Lightning port, but operates at USB 3 speeds. So it's evident that all of this could have been taken to the next level 6 years ago. We had an iPad with Lightning running USB 3 speeds. USB 3 over Lightning is possible. But then we have an iPhone over here, the iPhone 12, that has the exact same chip as this iPad over here. They have different connectors. One is USB-C, one is Lightning. But instead of just running USB 3 over Lightning with this iPhone, they decided to keep it down at USB 2 speeds, but give USB-C and USB 3 to an iPad Air. I don't understand, and if they kept USB 3 solely at the pro level device, I'd say, all right, well, at least there's some consistency in what they're doing. But the fact that two non-pro iPads have USB 3 speeds, to me, just doesn't make any sense. Especially when USB 3 is capable over Lightning. And then, of course, yes, USB 3 is definitely capable over USB-C. So when it comes to what Apple does, who they recognize, the audience that these influencers have, they can definitely have their opinions, and it's going to happen. There's no way that that's not going to happen. And as I was showing before, yeah, his opinion of the MacBook Air 15 inches that it's going to be the most popular one. Might happen, might not. I don't know. And that makes sense. Like, he's just saying, hey, this is what I think is going to happen. But for him to then complain about camera features being available and somewhat possibly better for the non-pro device when compared to the previous year's device, but then also saying that, well, because this iPhone 15 is not a pro device for this particular year, even though it has the same hardware as last year's pro device, there's nobody who would use this camera for what Apple would consider pro level features. So as an iPhone 15 owner myself, I know that the cameras are good, but when it comes to the nauseating fear of having to use that USB-C port operating at USB 2 speeds to transfer any type of video, I'm just like, oh my gosh. But then to hear, yes, this influencer just kind of shrug it off like it's not that big of a deal, I'm just like, dude, iPads from 6 years ago were operating at these speeds. What was Apple thinking people were going to do with that iPad? I don't know. Use the camera? Maybe. I don't know. And I'm sure if I went back to some of the keynotes from that long ago, you would see, oh, this is what Apple thinks you're going to be using your iPad for. But to then say that 6 years later, for their, yes, non-pro iPhone, but still a flagship level device, to expect people, at least some people, to not expect anybody to want to use that USB-C port to transfer large data files, just to me makes absolutely no sense. And I know nobody's gotten this far in this video, but in terms of a tech YouTuber or a person that just enjoys watching what people are able to produce on YouTube, I will say that, yeah, with Marquez, over the years, I definitely have started to watch less of his stuff. And I can tell that it looks like he's really trying to ramp up his car YouTube page, which, hey, people change and I'm happy for him. But I just wish he didn't just shrug it off like that. My biggest gripes with him in the past have been his display of what Sony cell phones are and how they're enthusiast designs. And most of the stuff he calls enthusiast level designs or enthusiast features are things that we just used to have in all smartphones that these big companies just slowly took away. So now that if you still want a headphone jack or a micro SD card or dual front facing speakers, you're considered an enthusiast. And I'm just like, I don't understand how those are enthusiast level features. They're things we all used to have, but Apple either never put them in or Google never put them in or Samsung took them away. And it's just like, dude, like, yeah, I get these are your opinions, but you're shitting on us. That's what you're doing. For those of us who say, yeah, like right now I'm talking to you on a pair of wired headphones, I'm happy that my Zenfone 9 can still accept just a regular pair of headphones. I don't have to plug it into the USB port, nor do I have to rely on Bluetooth. So yeah, that's not an enthusiast level thing. I'm using hardware from, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago to just continue talking on the phone. So I think that's really for me when I started saying, you know what, I'll watch some of it, but I'm just not a huge fan of it like I used to be. So I think I'm going to go, and I hope that whatever message I was attempting to convey actually came through. As an influencer, you have a responsibility, a social responsibility, I'd say. Yeah, you're going to have your opinions, but you need to make sure you hold these companies accountable. And I made a rant about him before. I made a rant about John Prosser. I think I made a rant about Max Tech. At some point, I'll probably make a rant about Mr. Who's the Boss. I mean, it's just, yes, you can definitely project and state your opinions, but as a tech YouTuber and hopefully a lover of tech, you would want them sometimes to, I'm not even saying push the envelope, but in this situation, USB 3 is not pushing the envelope. It's not pushing the envelope. It's literally giving us close to what the bare minimum should be in this year of 2023. So on that note, I think I'm going to stop this video. And I honestly feel like a good portion of the video was negative. And I don't like being negative, so I haven't decided what I'm going to title this. But yeah, it as you can tell, I'm really bothered. Not specifically by what Marquez said, but more so Apple. And I'm not giving any other company a pass as well, because for the phones that I've purchased that are modern, so the main one that I'm thinking about right now is my Zenfone 9, that I absolutely love that phone. And my biggest complaint with it, in fact, my only real complaint, is that it too also has a USB 2.0 USB-C port. And when I first bought that phone, of course, I made a video and I just didn't understand why that's a place that they thought that they should cut corners, especially when they market their cameras as leading industry. And I understand that there are multiple ways to get things off of a device, but for a lot of us, and I would just say me, the easiest way to do it is to just hook up a cable, drag and drop. And to know that I have to use a USB 2 port just makes me not want to do it. Makes me not want to take a bunch of pictures or record a bunch of videos or transfer various files to the phone. It truly changes how I use the phone. And the truth is that it goes the other way too, that bringing USB 3 to the phone changes the way that an individual can use the phone. So I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just saying that for somebody who has a platform as large as he does, and for somebody who I know knows that there's a massive difference in performance between USB 2 and USB 3, and for somebody who also knows that USB 3 isn't a pro level feature, regardless of what Apple may want to claim, and I've shown that they aren't even consistent even with that in terms of what pro devices, in terms of what non-pro devices get it. When it's the base model iPad, the cheap one, hey, I get it. But when it's any flagship level device, specifically talking about the iPhone, their bread and butter, without the iPhone, the company, I'm not going to say it wouldn't exist, but that clearly is where they make a lot of, if not, well, most of their money. It's a flagship level device. So there's no reason for USB 2 to be on it. And I know I'm repeating myself, and I'm repeating myself because yes, it has affected the way that I use the phone. And yeah, I don't need ProMotion. I don't need that third camera lens. I don't need the latest and greatest chip. I don't really know what else comes, the always on display, which nothing that I said really connotates a pro level feature, but that's just what Apple does. And yeah, it's a little frustrating. But I wanted to end this on a positive note, because I did mention John Prosser earlier, because he's the one that got me familiar with the fact that USB 3 wasn't optional over Lightning. But I wanted to share something positive. So as he closes his not a review for the iPhone 15 Pro, even though I didn't get the 15 Pro, he said a lot of positive things in his iPhone 15 video, and I agree with him. And he's going to say something here, and I figured it's just a nice way to end this video. Whether you're looking at the iPhone 15 or the 15 Pro, I feel like this is a good way to end the video.
Last year, I ended my iPhone 14 Pro not a review by saying that if you have a 12 Pro or a 13 Pro, don't worry about it. This year, I do feel differently. This year, with this phone, I feel much happier with this than I did with this. Noticeable upgrades. Like this is the best iPhone. And I know they say that every year, but this year, this is the best iPhone they've ever made. Yeah, I guess this year I'm saying it. iPhone 15 Pro, worth the upgrade. I think you should buy it. But listen, don't just go out there and hurt your wallet to buy this phone because John Prosser told you in some stupid YouTube video that it's really good. What I am saying, though, is that if you came to this video, because I know you're out there, if you came to this video hoping that I was going to talk you out of buying this phone, I can't do that. What I can tell you is that if you have the money, and it won't hurt you too bad, live a little. We only live once. Life is short. If you think this will make you happy, go buy it. It'll make you happy. It's a really, really, really great iPhone. It's a really, really great phone. Just stay away from fine woven. Yeah?